Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about a subject matter that I don't talk about often, and that is the public view here in America around the country and around government and how they should subjugate themselves to the government. And so let's talk first off about trust. So in the United States for the last, I would say, well, since 2000, maybe a little earlier, since 99, back with the Bushes, the government has done a lot to lose the trust of the American people. The issue is the American people are no longer ousting these folks and putting them in prison, so they've been able to get away with a lot. There's a modern study that says, do Americans trust information on elections? And when you look at our election situation, the last election most people thought did not go the way that the vote did. And when you ask people if they trust election results, the overwhelming majority do not. And it turns out that the place where they turn the most for the truest data comes from the government certification of election results, which, if the argument is that the government's jacking with this, then that would be the one that would probably be most dishonest, right? But 51% of Republicans and 87% of Democrats trust government certifications. At least that's been what was released recently. When it comes to the subject of AI, when you ask do Americans trust artificial intelligence, nearly two-thirds of Americans, 64%, are not confident that information they get from AI is reliable or factual. Over half, or 52%, are concerned about how AI affects the information that they're getting. And over half, 51%, say AI results are rarely based on facts. And if you look at the recent Google debacle with their Gemini, it basically turned every white person into a black person on our historical record, which just goes to show when you have people writing stuff that have specific beliefs, you end up with a product that supports those beliefs. And this is AI, is something that should be free of all those prejudices, etc. But it's not. It's basically as limited as the creator, or of its own creator. So that kind of tells you that AI is no better than anything done by the human hand. It says most Americans think AI will make finding data about future elections more difficult. I agree with that. For instance, if you looked at the most recent suggestions around how the polls are going, where people say Kamala is tied with Trump at 47%, etc., that's completely false. There's no way that's true. When other results are searched out, the numbers are drastically different. So why would you use false data? It's very simple. People don't want to waste their vote if they think somebody's going to get beat hands down. So by falsifying the fact that she's as close to what Trump is getting at in the current market, suggests that you can vote for her and it wouldn't be a wasted vote, when indeed it actually would be, because currently I think 25% of those in actual polls are saying they would vote for Kamala, and the remaining is saying they would vote for Trump or someone else. So then if you look at this from a biblical perspective, you wonder, if you can't trust the government, what do you do? And is there biblical wisdom around the government, or what you should do with the government? It's very simple. Deuteronomy, the book of law, tells you what you should do with tyrants, right? And it also tells you what you should do with traitors. So you get that from Deuteronomy. But in Romans 13, 1-7, the Bible says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. Therefore, there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For the rulers are not terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. If he is God's servant for your good, but if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, and avenger who carries God's wrath to the wrongdoer. So the Bible's suggesting in Romans 1-7 of chapter 13 is that if it's a good government, you should follow them. And if they're doing wrath upon people, then they're going to reach the punishment of God's judgment. So let's look at 1 Peter 2:13-17. It says, be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be an emperor as supreme or to governors is sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put silence to the ignorance of foolish people. Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, and honor the emperor. So here's the point I'd like to make around 1 Peter. If the government is good and people are doing what should be good, then they're going to stomp out evil. If you look at the book of Deuteronomy, which is the book of law, if our government ran by that, it'd be a little bit different. You wouldn't have the issues that you're having today because things would be done right, and you wouldn't have a government that was a traitorous situation or a treasonous situation or a terrorizing institution if they were doing what Deuteronomy says in the book of law. It would be just, and that's the thing about law. It should be just. So if you look again at Romans 13:7, it says, pay all to what is owed to them, taxes whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. Now I think 13:7 is probably the best verse on the whole thing. I'll read it again. It says, pay to all what is owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. So if you're overtaxed, you're not respected, and they're not giving you honor, and they're not those people that should fill those positions, then that is what it is. Doing right means that you're doing right to a good government that's doing right by you and doing right by the citizens. So I would say this to young people right now. The world is in a pretty tumultuous place, it seems. It's no worse than it's ever been, okay? The problem is the amount of noise now that's fed to young folks, and they're on phones all the time. We have phones 24/7. People think they should be able to get in touch with us all the time. All of that's very new. That's only been around for the last 20 years, okay? So pretty soon it's going to slow down. Pretty soon technology is going to slow down a bit. It's going to dumb down. Yes, you'll have AI and you'll have other things that pop up that carry things in waves of different directions, but at the end of the day, what will impact your life will be limited. It will start to be limited. There's going to be some controls put in place, either individually or by local governments, just to stop the noise and disinformation. Right now, unfortunately, there was a talk for the last 30 years of what the internet could do for humankind. Unfortunately, what it's done, it's given a voice to the dumb. The stupid people are no longer fear opening their mouths, and they're openly stupid in public. People talk as if they're experts on subject matters that they do not have a clue about. And then expert speakers on the subject matter are disavowed or not listened to. They're dismissed as being hearsay, just like the rest of the noise. And that's the biggest problem with the internet in the current situation. It's a lot more false noise than it is anything else. People are not getting mentors from this as often as they're getting grief, okay? So the internet should enter a situation, and there are many, don't get me wrong, there are many that use the internet to increase their understanding around things and increase their learning opportunities and do those things. But the majority of what comes from the internet these days is noise. If you think about all the different apps, all the TikToks and all the videos and all those things, I mean, none of that shows anything but the degradation of human life. And there's a lot of people that run through that stuff, and all they do is show how they disrespect others, how it's not just, how it's not doing what it should be doing. But the benefit of it is we're catching treasonous acts on video. We're catching treacherous acts on video. For instance, the ATF going into a man's house at 6 o'clock in the morning, kicking in the door and shoot him in the head. There is no way that anyone can say that didn't happen exactly like it was seen on video. So the best thing about technology is what it's going to collect randomly like that is usable proof in institutions that are just, okay? So at the end of the day, the noise will go away and these things will be brought in line. The problem is, how far are we going to go outside of the norm and outside of what is acceptable right now in this period of mass noise where people are confused, it seems, about everything. And so here's the other piece I say about it too. You're seeing 1 to 2% of the population on all these videos and things. The majority of people are like you. They know the situation. They have a brain in their heads. They know what's going on. They have it figured out somewhat. But the 2 to 3% or 1 to 2% of the population that's constantly subject matter of these videos where you think, wow, are people really this dumb? And then think about the view of America outside of America. The view of America outside the United States, they watch the videos of the dumbest people around, and so here the dumbest Americans are being put out there in the world where they seem like they don't have a basic understanding of life, of geography, of their country, of their own cultures, etc. And so when that gets out there like that, people think that represents America, and it doesn't. So let me say this. Those people, the dumbest of the dumb, don't represent America. Just like these politicians don't represent America. American people have tolerated a lot of noise in government for the last 20 years, last 30 years. And then the government has taken our information. There was a bill passed in 2001, the Patriot Act is what they called it. And all that happened there is the government started collecting all of our information. And the reason they did that is so they could use what we watch, what we consume, what we do to turn around and then manipulate us based on ad campaigns, on stories that they tell, on things to manipulate right, left, etc. The majority of people are smart enough to know that the right and left wing are both on the same bird. Okay, and at the end of the day, our government has no fiduciary responsibility. They spend money left and right with no control. Every 6 months, there's got to be some agreement on a spending budget or the government's going to shut down. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely insane. There is no budget. So to say budget means there's a ceiling to what you can spend. And there is no budget. Every year now, it's trillions of dollars, trillions, and billions are given away, every year. In the meantime, the American family is paying $40 for a steak. Okay, they're paying $3 a gallon at the pump. They're paying higher prices now than they ever have before, and they've paid a higher percentage of taxes now than they ever have before. So typically that has a life that is limited. Okay, just historically, when you abuse a group of people, something happens. That's the catalyst, and there's typically a guttural response that becomes pretty pertinent and pretty permanent. So that's the point that I wanted to make today. Here's the point I would say to young people that are so confused and don't know what's going on, and they see all these idiots on the internet. Do two things. Read the history of the country so you're familiar with why this country was started. Okay? And if you can hold true to those things, all which were very noble, if you hold true to those things on why this country was started, then be who you are, with that being your base of belief. Okay? And then when you have things going on and you want to gain knowledge for it, look biblically. That's one thing the internet does. You can look up Bible verses on the internet. You don't have to have a Bible in front of you. It's best to have a Bible in front of you so you can study and go back later as well. But you can look up these things on the internet also and get a quick glimpse on the wisdom that comes from there and kind of tie the two together. And ultimately, if you look at Jesus' words in John 19:11, this is when he was told he was going to be crucified, and someone suggested that they would have power to help him. And he answered them, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin." And so at that point, he's talking about the people that turned him over to Pilate, right? And also, he said to the point that he was giving his life, no one could take it from him, that he was laying that down himself. So there's 2 points of government that I would say. One is, if they're appointed by God and they're good and they're Christian, those who resist will incur judgment. Okay, 1 Peter 2:17 says, honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, and honor the emperor, meaning the emperor at that time was their government, so that way you could put our government in the spot where it says emperor. At the end of the day, if they're honorable, then you would be in pain of judgment if you're not supporting them. However, if they're not, if they're evil, then they would have the issue. So let's go to John 9:10-11. So Pilate said to him, "You will not speak to me. Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" And this is what Jesus told him, "You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over has the greatest sin." Saying once again that these people who gave him over to Pilate were the ones guilty of the greater sin. Titus 3:1-2 says, "Remind them to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready for every good work, Speak evil of no one, avoid quarreling, be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy towards all people. So think about this. If you have groups and a think tank that says things other than be ready for every good work, if they're saying things other than speak evil of no one, think about your politicians. Think about what's been going on in those commercials. Think how they sound. The next is they're supposed to avoid quarreling. Any quarreling going on in all that noise, it says to be gentle and to show courtesy towards all people. That's Titus 3:1-2. If the government's not acting in this manner, then the people should be confused because the government is not appropriate, right? But here's the point. 8 years can change that completely. 10 years from now, the government outlook can be completely different from now. This is what I would say to all young folks. The Constitution is what makes us powerful. If you are voting in a way that's anti-Constitution, whatever that is, then that's a problem. So go back and look at the history. And the reason people want to take your history away, excuse me, the reason people want to take your history away is so you think that this is the first time you've gone through or we've gone through these sufferings. It's not. Each generation goes through its own level of suffering. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But the history is to show how we survived it all together as one. So that's why you want to look into the history of the country. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in the mind of man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand." So that's what I want to end with is Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans in the minds of man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. So at the end of the day, all you can do as a Christian is vote accordingly to your beliefs, not to what some subset of the group that represents you or that you think represents you is pushing. Make that decision yourself as an individual and vote based on that. If you're not voting to support your beliefs, then one day your beliefs can be threatened. Okay, that's the thing about the Constitution. Once people start chipping away at it and it's allowed to happen, then the whole thing is at risk. My view as a constitutional Christian here in America is that the Constitution is law. Anything that goes against it or attacks it is treasonous against the Constitution. That's the way our country was built. That's the way our Constitution was written. So we need to think about those things. So think about that. Read Proverbs 19:21 if you need to have that in the back of your mind. Many are the plans in the mind of man, but it is the purpose of God that will stand. Just understand, everyone thinks it's the end of times. It hasn't been yet, except for in the life of Noah. Okay? So hopefully this is useful to you. If you like subject matter such as this, please subscribe, please share, and be good.